Getting ready for our debut as Hologram Jesus. It's Voyager, please. A hateful voyage to the Delta Quadrant. My name is Joseph.
And I'm your rogue AI holographic co-host, Peter.
Before we discuss this episode of Voyager, I believe you and I have a little chatting to do about Lower Decks.
Yeah, if you guys are not current on your Lower Decks, there's going to be a bunch of spoilers here, and there's some pretty good ones too, so I don't know. Jump ahead 6 minutes or whatever, and we'll probably be through it. But yeah, Lower Decks would be the show that Joe barely squeaked by an approval of for season 1, said he wasn't going to watch season 2 at all, and so far has beat me to the mark on all 3 episodes so far.
I don't think I beat you to the mark on episode 1. I did not watch it until episode 2 had long since been on, that I caught up with it real quick. You know, it's a great thing about it being a half hour. It's not hard to consume the product. And then I did watch episode 3 before you. That is correct.
It is so odd for me to sit down and watch a Star Trek product and not have a notebook or an expectation that I'm going to have to hit the pause button at least 20 times to write a note down and just watch something whole as it was intended to be. First episode was not a big fan of. The last 2, though, have been pretty excellent, and I'm really enjoying.
I definitely thought the first episode was pretty cringy and encapsulated everything I didn't like when we reviewed it, which is basically all of the Beckett Mariner, Captain Freeman stuff that just
Slap humor.
got too old, and all the kind of entry-level slapstick.
I was thinking about this a lot. Season 1 of any TV show is crazy, and then season 2 gets scary because season 1's we're going to throw a lot of stuff at the wall, and then we're going to decide what sticks, and that's what we're going to focus in on, and maybe get lucky, and the stuff you like is what you get more of, or maybe all the shit you hated becomes the focus, and all the stuff you like is in the minority of the viewer base, and they cut that. So seeing the way episode 1 went was disheartening for me, and made me think it was going to be the later. So 2's that one where they're raiding the Collectors Guild.
Yeah, episode 2 is the one where you get the scenes on the Titan and you see what Boimler's been up to, and that's like the B plot.
But the A plot, which is whatever the Collectors Guild that Kivash Fazio belonged to, one of these dudes died, and Starfleet's helping catalog all this stuff. And Lower Decks is a real repeat offender in name dropping and just trying to fit as many references in as possible, and a lot of times it makes me glaze over. This, where it's just stuff in the background or they don't call it out by name, was a real treasure trove of cool shit.
Yeah, you mentioned that Marty McFly's fucking hoverboard was in the back or something.
And his Nikes and the hoverboard were there. They were next to the what was the fucking Candy Crush iAdventure game that Riker brought back from Rise, that like addicts the ship to PopCap games.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I remember that.
There was all sorts of other stuff. I wish I would have went through and with a note again. I wish I had my notebook there to classify it all. But you get into episode 3 and you got some different stuff going on here. And as you put it, there's just
episode 2. To me, the best part was just like Boimler's adventures on the Titan and the subtext and eventually actual text being these high stakes action adventure episodes are not what Star Trek is actually about. That's the point of the B plot, is Discovery isn't very good at being Star Trek. That's explicitly what they're trying to tell you, is actually Star Trek is supposed to be about quiet space exploration and diplomacy and solving science problems. And this stuff is just exhausting and not particularly what anyone signed up for. That's what they say in the actual episode. And that's so one of our listeners told me, like, you should probably watch this because this is what the point they end up making during the episode. And I'm like, you're kidding me. And I go to watch it. It's literally it. Like, Boimler's like, all of you, did you really sign up to be just shot at every week? Like, this is nuts. And so if you've got a creator who is feeling confident enough to essentially insult his own boss, okay, you have my respect and my attention. And that's where episode 3 came in.
As you put it, it's the C plot that has a special place in the Voyager Please appreciation pantheon.
I mean, the whole thing, it is a Voyager fan episode. That Boimler is a huge Voyager fan.
Voy, as he puts it.
And Tom Paris has come to the Cerritos for a morale visit. And
Lieutenant Tom Paris at that.
he's got 2 full pips, so he was promoted, right? Like when he got back, he wasn't lieutenant junior grade anymore.
That's probably his dad, because I can't see anybody else like taking an objective look at
Tom's career and saying this guy's leadership material.
Wait, hold on a second. He attacked an underwater mining operation and capsized the economy of an entire civilization. What?
Yeah,
And you gave him 30 days in the brig, and half a year later you re-promoted him?
I have to say that of all of the Voyager crew, if you actually ran the clock out after they got back, the one I would expect to not be in Starfleet, just by choice, just be like, I'm going to go do something else with my life, it would be Tom Paris. Like, he's not that interested in being a Starfleet officer. He's interested in flying, but that's it. He does, like. But anyway, for the purpose of the episode, he's a lieutenant.
We watch all this stuff with 7 of 9, and it's all colored in Echeb now, and it's all colored by what Picard has shown us of the future, right? I can't watch the stuff and not know that, at least in the Kurtzman regime, this is what happens in the future, and that's what they're calling canon. So now I'm going to be watching the rest of this Voyager stuff knowing that Tom sticks it out and questioning, is Tom really as disinterested and everything else as it would appear, or is he secretly loving every minute of this and like it's indulging a secret fantasy that he can't let anybody see?
I think I could see a circumstance where he gets back and they kind of like put him into reserve, and he goes out and does this stuff as like a favor to his dad, that sort of thing. There's a circumstance that you can kind of satisfy both circumstances.
Sure.
That I think, although they're never going to explain, but you could work it out for yourself.
Going on this USO PR tour and having to go fucking like do meet and greets on second contact vessels.
That's something you send Tom to go do. Like, your Chakotay, he visits the ambassador class vessels, the heavy cruisers. He
goes to the jail because he's Maquis. Again, they don't really ever address that. Although I guess they kind of would, because they do name drop Chakotay in this, and it's not in association with, the Maquis penal colony of 13 people or however many people survive Voyager to the end. What was it? Because they kind of outlined that in the one where Tuvok bad touches everybody and wakes the Maquis back up. What was it? They're like 30 some Maquis?
Yeah, quarter of the crew. I think that's what they say.
Well, I mean, there you're building very relevant genre in this episode. But the C plot, anyways, sorry anybody who jumped to the 6-minute mark and thought we weren't going to spoil things anything past that. Federation necromancy.
Yeah, so the C plot is Rutherford sees that Shax is still alive, and everyone's like, yes, Shax is here. It's not like in his brain or something, which is, where you thought that would go. No, he's still alive. And the C plot builds on the concept that, of course, throughout the history of Star Trek, there's been a multitude of ways of cheating death that they very, very quickly and elegantly call out over and over. Like, maybe he's a mirror universe copy. Maybe he was in the Nexus.
Transporter double. Nexus, yeah. Time ribbons, the same thing.
So there is clearly something that happened because of a conversation that Shax has with the chief engineer, where someone actually asks Shax why is he still alive, and he gets immediately like reprimanded and sent for reassignment. And so you're not supposed to know, and no one wants to talk about it, and it's bothering Rutherford because Shax died to save his life, and eventually he gets into the turbo lift with him and is like, I just have to, I feel really bad that you died. I would feel better if you tell me how you're alive. And that is when literally Shax lays down the knowledge that the godless heathen Federation science is so depraved that you don't want to hear about how they bring people back to life.
And I like they don't really ever lay the details out. Like the most you get is like, well, first there's the death part, right? In heaven, yeah. And then there's the bet on, about the Dark Mountain, right? or was it the Black Mountain?
Yeah, the Black Mountain.
And you start getting like this real crazy abstract battle, and then the camera kind of blurs out, and you just see the look of horror, this Lovecraftian stare as madness grips him.
Yeah, Rutherford clearly loses some sand points as this continues to get explained to him by Shax.
Great writing. Did you see that Rutherford's? Did you watch Loki?
No, I didn't.
Oh, well, the guy who plays Rutherford is in that. Pretty heavy.
I know Jennifer Hale played the Time like mascot, and that was that
Miss
I had
Minutes.
just I have lost all interest in Marvel properties.
Well, Loki was pretty cool if you're looking for something to knock around with. But
Speaking of things to knock around with, what episode of Voyager did we watch this week?
so we are in season 7, episode 10 per Memory Alpha, Flesh and Blood Part 2.
Where we last left our heroes was that the super holographic prey had managed to convince the Doctor to commit some light treason, and on their way out the door, the abusive AI does the only thing that abusive AI in the Delta Quadrant knows how to do, and that's kidnap B'Elanna Torres, and they are speeding away after having disabled Voyager. And a lot of this episode is really focused on giving Iden, who is the Bajoran hologram leader, the center stage of the episode. It is really about kind of fleshing out what his deal is and what the plan is for the holograms. And I really like Iden. I think that he was very effectively portrayed in that he is. You can see the line where he drew of like, this is his underlying programming about being a Bajoran, and then this is how it has evolved as a consequence of all the bullshit he's been through, right? Like, I like how that all kind of came together, that, he has this spiritual core and it's turned into essentially a messiah complex. Neat way of showing how what he was originally built as has turned into this monstrosity as a consequence of all the other bits being added to his programming and, the constant murder.
I feel like what they do with him is such a cheap cop-out and disappointingly predictable. Like, it's a good story, but it didn't sit well with me.
What did you find cheap about it?
I felt like making him actually a bad guy was the easy way out of the story.
Granted, it is traditional for Trek to have the bad guy be the bad guy and not necessarily to keep him 100% sympathetic throughout. I get where you're going with that. I guess I don't mind that they made him the villain. Like, it makes so much sense to me that he would be so psychologically damaged as a consequence of everything that happened, and that his spiritual beliefs would turn into a god complex, a messiah complex, as a consequence of his, going around liberating, his people.
All right, so we're going to jump all over the place here as we discuss what happens to this guy. It doesn't track because he is a good guy for episode 9 and then instantly becomes a bad guy in episode 10. And when he has Voyager at their mercy, he has their shield codes, and he could just blow them out of the fucking water. They represent a huge security threat to them. Also, they're directly responsible for the suffering of his entire flock, right? The fact that he just turns the other cheek and lets him slide. And then you get that shit with, I don't know, whoever the little mining ship was that they take the virtual intelligences, if we want to jump back in our own back catalog of terms, right? You've got artificial intelligence and you've got virtual intelligence per Mass Effect. They get those 3 holograms, right? He finds out that they're garbage, but all the other mining vessels said was like, you're not going to get away with this. You can't just steal our stuff. And he's like, okay, kill these dudes, and blows them up with no fucks to give. Like, it's such a flip of the switch that I don't know. It's a gotcha bitch moment, and I didn't care for it.
See, everything you mentioned here makes just total sense to me with what they set up, and I guess that's why it doesn't bother me the same way it does bother you. Like, because of how he was constantly hunted and murdered and brought back and hunted and murdered over and over and over again, his empathy has been tremendously suppressed towards the people who were oppressing him. And I guess because I'm such a DS9 fan, and the entire Bajoran storyline is about this, right? It's about Bajorans who just got oppressed by literal space Nazis, which is what the Cardassians are portrayed as. You know, murdering them, exploiting for their resources, raping their women, all of it, to the point where they become terrorists and are so effective at being terrorists and killing the fuck out of them that they run them off the planet, that it's no longer in their interest to be there. And Kira, as a character, all of her damage is about the fact that she spent years murdering Cardassians. That's all she did, right? She was a terrorist, and now she has to be this proper military officer that has to show like even-handed justice and compassion towards everyone, including Cardassians, right? And it's really hard, and it's seasons of growth that come from that. Well, here we got another Bajoran character who is abused and murdered and brought back and murdered and brought back over and over and over again. So he's become a zealot. That's within the Bajoran character, right? That he, except this one, he's self-aware that he's not actually Bajoran, that he's a hologram. So he's extended that sense of zealotry and his community not being Bajorans, but being holograms. And the enemy is not Cardassians, it's organics. It all fits together so well with established canon, with this type of character, and that he's specifically Bajoran, that I thought, like, yeah, of course this is what he's doing. Yeah, like, of course he just doesn't give any fucks. Like, he let Voyager go because he promised the Doctor he would. And the Doctor is a whole hologram, and he made that promise, and he honored that because he sees him as his people. But, you know, these other jabronis, like, fuck them, right? I don't fucking care what happens to them. Blow them up. Oh, the people that keep murdering me have shown up, but it's time to show them the light of God, i.e. me, as we murder them the way they always murdered us. Thus they will know, you know, the justice of the Lord. Like, that's just tracks so perfectly with that kind of characterization from Bajorans. And I think maybe because you haven't seen DS9, that might be the missing element.
Again, it's too much. He's not just a zealot. He is, oh gosh, what's the Machiavellian? Not Machiavellian. The Doctor even calls him out with the complexes. This God complex, where I'm writing my own new Bible, where we are all saints. I am going to be, you know, the prophet of our people, and it's an 11 on a 10-point scale. And for him to have been able to suppress all that, I don't know. It's Star Trek. It all fits. It's not bad writing for Trek. It's just I felt like it was the lazy way out. And we can kind of examine that why more as we go through the episode. But we pick up with a freshly kidnapped B'Elanna Torres. She's not happy to be there. She has been on the receiving end of.
I just really wanted to, like, again, you know, just like, can I just stop being abused by AI, please?
Mm-hmm. This time she went very far out of her way to not be involved with any of this kooky nonsense, and they just nabbed her at random. Rightfully so, because, you know, the Doctor tells him, like, oh, hey, she's really, really good with holograms. You should have grabbed her instead of me. And they're like, oh, okay, well, we're going to put it in the side notes here, and maybe we'll circle around back. Well, they grab her. If we recall, the way they were able to do it was Voyager tried hitting them with a main deflector dish, Care Bear stare. They had the codes to the shields. They were able to reverse polarity and fuck Voyager up pretty cool. I liked Voyager drifting dead in space.
Yeah, there was actually a lot of good space shots with Voyager in this whole episode.
The area around the main deflector dish was all burned up, like the paint got seared because the dish got too hot. And they're all kind of like, oh man, how the fuck did that happen? B'Elanna's gone. How could this happen? And then Detective Tuvok comes along and says, well, we got double crossed.
Props to some nice characterization where 7 of 9 is like, I'm not as good as fixing the ship as B'Elanna. Like, I can fix it, but I'm not as good at fixing it as she is. You know, if she were here, she'd be fixing it. I'd be shooting her. Very motivating.
Maybe biting her.
Maybe biting her. I don't know. We're into each other, but we don't talk about it.
Mm-hmm. Where's Icheb? But I enjoy the exchange between Chakotay and the captain, as they're walking away,
Yeah,
captain's blaming herself like crazy.
they're the West Wing walk and talk. It was a very good scene.
I blame myself. I didn't scan his code when he got back. Who knows what kind of rewriting they did. I should have known by the way he was so insistent on us helping him that he's obviously been tampered with. And Chakotay is kind of like, well, hey, it takes one to know one. Maybe the EMH got co-opted. And then Jane was like, co-opted? What do you mean? And he's like, well, you see, sometimes when you're around people's bullshit for a little too long, it rubs off on you, and before you know it, you're the bad guy.
This
and
goes back to the thread that we've had multiple times here, which is everyone but Janeway seems to comprehend the Doctor as a person. It's unfortunate because we thought we settled this 2 seasons ago, but for whatever reason, Janeway is just still always the last dog at the bowl when it comes to understanding that the Doctor does people things. He's a person now. He's been a person for a long time. Except for Equinox Part 2. We'll just carve that out. We'll just flush that down the toilet.
Put it over there next to Threshold, which, jumping back over to fucking episode 3, we'll always have Tom Paris. Them specifically calling out Tom Paris, his transwarp adventure, the Salamander state.
Oh yeah,
and then him actually
Lower Decks recanonized Threshold explicitly.
And I'm gonna tell you what, Joe, if they went to Threshold, I guarantee you by the end of season 2 of Lower Decks, Tuvix will be addressed front and center.
Let me be clear to you: you won't have to wait for Lower Decks to bring up Tuvix.
Well, I'm sure Lower Decks is going to do a better job of addressing the situation than anything
Fair enough.
In Star Trek in Voy.
Okay, so back on the holographic ship, Torres is Iden is trying to convince her to, like, please help us make our holographic projector that we can put onto a planet. We just don't want to hurt anybody. We don't want to be involved in violence. I could have blown up Voyager. I didn't, because I promised the Doctor I wouldn't. We're not. As I discussed
with the Doctor, the planet we're looking at is like Y class or something that's real toxic and nasty, because we don't need to breathe clean air and we just want to be left the fuck alone. And the Doctor's like, you're right. And there's kind of this cool thing going on where the Doctor can't stop thinking. The Doctor can't think with portals, right? He's stuck in this meat bag mode and isn't thinking like outside the box of like, what would a holographic society look like?
Right. Iden is properly calling him out, I think, a little bit about, like, you've just spent all of your time. Literally, you care for people. Like, you care for organics. That is your programming. That is what you were built to do. So you can't think about it outside of the context of that. You've become so much more. You're capable of it, but you're still very much used to doing the thing you were designed to do.
Megalomania was a thing I was thinking of. That's Iden's problem.
On the holographic vessel, Iden's making the pitch to B'Elanna, please help us. And she's kind of willing to be convinced. Like, the Doctor works her over a little bit. It's like, listen, you two have been a freedom fighter that decided to just help people that you feel were being oppressed even when no one else wanted to help them. I just sort of kind of did the same thing. So you're not allowed to be mad right now. And also, would you consider helping? Iden gives the slick kind of car salesman's pitch as to what they're up to. And she's
like, on the ropes. He's like, cool. Hey, I'm going to give you like a little sister to coach. I'm not going to read the room here for a minute. It's a fucking Cardassian. So
I get that, like, he wouldn't necessarily, like, put that together, right? Like,
you just sat there and gave me this whole fucking crock of shit about Deep Space Nine and Bajorans and Cardassian killing and his everything.
He wouldn't know that B'Elanna was a Maquis.
He said that she's a Maquis. That's what you just said.
No, the Doctor says that, not Iden. The Doctor brings that up as, like, you're not allowed to be mad right now. Iden never brings it up. So Iden doesn't necessarily know the faux pas that
Well,
he has
listen,
made.
if the doctor's drinking the Kool-Aid, I think the doctor would have stepped in and been like, hey, listen, real quick. Not only does she not like Cardassians, but she really hates Cardassian holograms. This is a whole thing when a rubber puppet got stuck on her. Like, can we give her the Borg to be like her little BFF, or that Tal Shiar Shiar over there?
Or the Breen with
Breen.
the giant helmet.
Give her a no Ferengi. Real miss there.
I mean, they're the most deadly aliens in the Delta Quadrant. They flummoxed all of Voyager's security.
I still think there should have been some Pac-Leds in there.
At least a couple. What was it? The Nausicaans.
Hey, listen, right now, anybody out in the Facebook group, right? That's our Voyager Please Trauma Support group. Go ahead, start a fresh thread, somebody, and let's list off all of these species that should have been holographically represented in these Hunger Game isomorphs, but didn't make it. I want to see who can come up with the most absurd.
The Herodians show up to where Voyager is trying to put themselves back together, and the the little man that is presently still assisting Voyager, the little man Herodian Donick, is trying to stick with Voyager and saying like, I don't really want to go do the hunter thing anyway, and I feel super responsible, and clearly all of you have more of a moral compass than my people, so maybe I can hang out here for a little while longer. And the Herodian are too busy being Captain Planet villains to like, or GI Joe villains, really, to stop
Good
and
call.
think for 10 seconds and immediately storm off to go after the holograms without really like deciding to take the guy back or something.
Speaking of Cobra, the Klingassians, I think would have been a great GI Joe villain. The
That's true.
Vodpar. But speaking of Cobra, explain to me again why the Herodian don't just curb stomp Voyager before skipping off to go hunt those holograms down. Like,
Yeah, yeah. What was the point of that? I don't understand why they wouldn't be like, hey, it's you
where
guys again. All of this
where
is your fault, right?
where does Voyager get this hall pass with infinite punches from the Herodian, despite all of the antagonization? Like, again, Worst World, the Killing Game Part 1 and Part 2, not undeserved by Voyager.
Yeah, they had that coming. They really went out of their
They
way
asked
to,
for it.
to stick their dick where it did not belong over and over and over again at the beginning of season 4. That is what ultimately ended up happening because of that.
I get by the end of Worst World, they part ways like at a truce, right? I don't have any idea by the end of this episode how the Herodian aren't like 110% gunning for Voyager again.
The Herodian tromp off, not having touched Voyager, and they come up with a plan to get into the ion wake of the Herodian hunting vessels. So they basically are tailgating a Herodian ship, so they can't be detected. They can continue to follow because Donick is convinced, like, if they find him, they're just going to kill your doctor and kill your engineer. They're not going to give any fucks.
I put that as a Voyager eating butt.
The fuck?
That's a position Voyager has to take on these ships to stay in their ion wake, because the engineer's like, yeah, there's a blind spot there in their butt, so you gotta just eat butt the whole way and we'll be fine. I want to fold back to the engineer guy. Also, I don't know what the line is in there, but I do have in my notes, shut the fuck up, Harry. So I think Harry said something very dumb in one of those scenes. I'm not going to bother to find it because it was...
I don't remember him saying anything I cared about. So if it was dumb, it didn't matter.
I got the impression for a minute that the engineer, the Herodian engineer, almost had taken pity, either had taken pity on the holograms and what was happening to them, or that basically this entire incident was not a mistake, and that this was a situation that he specifically engineered to happen because either he felt bad for the holograms and wanted them to be free of it, so like he Westworld turned them up to like 15s so they would be able to like escape captivity, like because he's basically Dr. Frankenstein, right?
In a
And
way, kind of hapless, but yeah.
is he though? Like, I'm not. I don't want to say it's sinister, but I think they certainly open the door that he may have been viewing these. If you take out the scene in which we're introduced to him, where he's like shooting that mega laser at everybody and is clearly scared shitless, I think you could very easily see a situation where he started viewing these guys as his creation and wanted them to get off and go do better things, or
I mean,
tear down the society that he hates.
they clearly intended for him to be sympathetic in regards to the holograms not deserving what happened to them.
Fair. But yeah, so he's got some ulterior motives here. He is not batting for Team Hirogen. So, anyways, Voyager starts eating Hirogen butt. They
And Paris, not a fan of eating ass, apparently. Not a giver. You know, he doesn't want to eat the ass.
that tracks. He is a entitled whiny
Yeah,
bit.
yeah, he wouldn't do that, would he? Tom Paris would not eat ass, figuratively or literally. I think I'm willing to stake a claim on that one, canon
And
wise.
that's really saying something about him personally when he is in a long-term, well, maybe not the long-term portion, but I mean, certainly in a short-term relationship with B'Elanna Torres, I would have to think that would be on the plate.
You know, I'm not how I don't know how freaky Klingons necessarily get. They seem more like they're into choking, to be honest with you. They're
Biting,
chokers.
biting for
Biting, yeah. Like maybe that's like a match that ends up working out. Like they're just not into that, you know. Maybe the Klingon ass is just really stank. And
well,
it's
I'm
just
sure
not
there's
okay.
it's dishonorable in the Klingon culture to eat the butt.
If you eat ass, you don't go to Sto-vo-kor. Oh, Larry's on the barge of the damned. Why? Oh, he ate butt.
Oh,
Oh no, Larry, why?
dishonored. Let me go ahead and call out fucking Lower Decks again, man. When they're talking about Klingon acid punk opera and how they actually had located a chorus of dishonored Klingons to sing the refrain.
They are getting very good on that show of making dense Trek jokes. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like the A plot of the third episode is uh, essentially Beckett and Tendi going on a mission together, and it's a lot of like hijinks and ensue.
World building.
And I the parts of it that were fun. It was my least favorite part of the episode. But parts of it that were fun were all the like deep Trek lore layered jokes that I decided just to sort of sandwich in there. You know, all of it really surrounding the fact that Tendi is an Orion, and Orions have a very like sinister and terrible and lascivious reputation, and it's all deserved. It's like 100% correct. That's what the episode shows. And like Tendi is not like representative like of a new kind of Orion. She's an outlier.
So Voyager's eating the butt. We jump back over to the hologram ship, and that's where we start kind of ramping up the crazy cult time. The doctor kind of points out to the leader, like, "Hey, you know, you're taking some, you're deviating from the Bajoran religion." And he's like, "Yeah, you know, as you pointed out, I've realized that was just part of my programming. So like my rabid faith is there, but I have replaced the paradigm that I'm observing with my megalomania, which paints me as basically the savior, and I'm
Yeah.
now hologram Jesus, and you can be my hologram disciple, and it's going to be really sweet. Also, death to the organics."
Yeah, the doctor's more hologram John the Baptist, if we're gonna get real specific, but the turn is definitely already being made. That's when they run into the mining vessel, steal the 3 holograms, blow them up when they threaten to go find the cops, and find out that the 3 holograms are essentially copies of Windows 98 and not particularly capable at anything, and not sentient, not even close. And B'Elanna and the Doctor are aghast. The two people have just been essentially murdered over 3 dinner plates, and this furthers the sinister nature of what's going on.
Speaking of sinister, we cut back over to the Hirogen who are trying to track these guys down. I notice in the bridge shots on the Hirogen loyal ship, the cargo nets of animal bones just swinging around in the rafters still, which was
And they got
something we talked about, like how they have vats of like liquefied prey, that soup they drink, and just how ridiculous. Like, as much as they've fleshed these guys out now with like background story and hopes and dreams and other stuff, and they just have these fucking uh, what's the Halloween store? Spirit Central.
yeah, the Spirit Halloween store that ends up in every abandoned Sears around Halloween.
That's what the fucking Hirogen Bridge looks like, with just very clearly plastic bones swinging around in these rickety ass nets like it's kickballs being put away in gym class. But they're onto them. So the holographic ship takes refuge in a nebula, and they start playing this game of Red October depth charge will smoke them out.
It gets a little confused because they do the raid on the mining vessel while all of this kind of stuff is happening, so it's not quite clear about the sequence of events, but ultimately the holographic ship is just trying to make a run for the poison planet so they can get their shit down on it and be like, okay, well, now the Hirogen can't actually come down here, so we're safe. That's like the impression you're going to get. The problem that develops is that Voyager intercepts the 2 Hirogen ships as they attempt to bring in the kill. And apparently Voyager ate its fucking spinach and decided to be Popeye and absolutely run the hottest dick on both of these Hirogen ships after they've been horrifically damaged, and it's been noted that they're no match to fight them. Immediately disables both in a extremely well done CG display of phaser and torpedo fire.
They hammer the shit out of them, and
Yeah, they
you
just fucking crush them.
like they it's Federation sucker punching 101. When I say it's absurd that Voyager isn't back on the Hirogen shit list, it's mind-boggling. I am a sucker, though. Anytime you see multiple phaser shots coming off the same phaser bank on a Federation,
Yes,
it's
when
so
they actually
fucking cool.
they did so much work on the details of those 2 shots, because you could see Voyager coming up astern and shooting from the different phaser strips correctly. Like that, the way it's, all of its basically its mounts, its firing mounts come around, and then it does the same thing on the opposite side, and then it shoots, it fires a spread of torpedoes that impacts kind of like the way the momentum would have them impact in different spots on the vessel they're firing at. Like, whoever decided to do the FX for this episode put in that Utopia Planitia shot level of effort.
Ooh. Just got
Like
my fucking hair on the back of my neck standing up. Okay. I was gonna say this might have been the best like Voyager space shot ever. The Utopia Planitia I think will go down as one of the greatest of all time. But ship combat, easily the best ship combat I've seen in Voyager yet.
Yeah, I would say the same. And it's kind of weird that the bar was so low that this is so clearly better. I think it is just perhaps the maturation of effects, though. Like, it's amazing how much better all the space stuff gets in Enterprise, and it begins a year after this ends. It's just that the mid early 90s CG where this show started is just a different world than that early 2000 stuff. That early 2000 stuff, they started to finally be able to get that down on a TV budget in a way that was actually pretty cool, and this is really an example of that.
The sales pitch to the visitors is supposed to be that they're going to get to the planet. It's a shitty planet. They just want to live there in peace, and they're going to leave everybody alone. It becomes clear after the murder of the space miners that turns out, dun dun dun, the holograms are evil all along.
Not all of them. Not all of them. Like Iden has gone crazy with his Messiah complex. Murder Tarsus is no help whatsoever. He's just good at murdering. But the little sister Cardassian engineer, she turns out to like have a conscience. And she becomes friends with B'Elanna. B'Elanna actually chooses to help them early on because of her. Like they have a lot of good sort of relationship building, considering it's only 45 minutes, right? Like you get a sense that B'Elanna could buy into the idea of like, oh, you know what? Maybe the doctor's onto something here, and I could help these people.
It
Like
is
by
very deserved. And even if you look at B'Elanna Torres with full continuity glasses on, the B'Elanna Torres that has been physically and emotionally tortured by every single piece of AI that Voyager has come across, from Gimp Doll sex robot to, I don't know, the fucking alien guy who squeezed her heart. Like, even if she should be prejudiced as fuck against not only holograms, but not only holograms, not only Cardassians, but especially hologram Cardassians, that it's still an effective co-opting that goes on here. I would have really liked it if like the heart of gold on that holographic ship would have turned out to be that Borg drone.
like the Borg drone was like, had a holographic puppy. He named it Marbles.
What if at the
Like
very end they're like, the holographic ship's got a chance to get like, the killing shot on Voyager before Iden can say like finish them, like the fucking Borg just comes up and just busts him over the back of the head with his dildo arm and goes, enough, I've been quiet too long, we're gonna be good, we're gonna do good, we're gonna show mercy. Did the Borg. B'Elanna is quickly clued into the fact that shit's wrong by the doctor, who's like, yeah, I think I really fucked up. Actually, that comes before.
I do love the B'Elanna. Do you think you fucked up? Like as they're sitting there, like, oh boy, this didn't work out. Nope, didn't, Doc.
Well, actually, there's a scene right before they blow up the mining vessel where she's like drinking the Kool-Aid and feeling good about it, and the doctor comes down. It's like, yeah, I got reservations, and like the fucking needle getting flicked off the record there, where she looks and she like snaps out, like, what do you mean you're having reservations? Like, yeah, he might actually be megalomaniac, thinking that he's like a religious entity now, and like worst case scenario, as it turns out, like I know episode 9 was really painting one picture for us, but like here in episode 10, the writer room had a change of heart, and like, yeah, he's evil, he is evil, everything's right, you were right to be afraid, and I made a big boo-boo.
I do like the way they did her relationship with the doctor in this episode, where the doctor is very regretful and B'Elanna's like, I accept that you're regretful, I'm still going to be shitty. Like
Also, too,
it's
can you imagine?
the right note.
Can you imagine? I don't think I could go to B'Elanna Tours and be like, yeah, I was really wrong. I was really, really wrong. They blow up the ship and the mining vessel, and then Tora starts mouthing off, and they're like, yeah, go put her in like confinement. And the doctor's like, well, let her go. And like, we can't, we're in warp. Once we get out of warp, we'll let her take that escape pod and go back to Voyager. And he goes back to sit down with her, and she's like, all the stuff rubbing his face in his own failure. We need to get out of here. Like, we need an escape plan. Like, well, you don't think he's gonna let us go? And then she looks at him like, did you not just watch him hold up his vampire cape and bring it down slowly as twirling his mustache? And he's like, oh yeah, he's gonna kill all of us for sure.
It's that almost fourth wall breaking sort of like, oh yeah, these are the situations we get into. This guy's the bad guy. Fuck. Like it was almost comedic, but perfect,
Mm-hmm.
The small moments in this episode are very well handled. They're handled
Who
like
did this?
You would expect actors who have been doing this for 7 years to be able to handle, the ask when it comes to that kind of dialogue.
Story part 2. Brian Fuller, Raph Green. I'm not familiar with Raph Green, although he was involved in the first one. Also, part 2. This is David Livingston, which is a very old name now. as far as directors go on Voyager. So it's easy to see why these beats are hitting as well as they are.
Speaking of beats that hit well, Voyager disables the two Hirogen vessels, and this unfortunately allows Iden to decide to beam all of the surviving Hirogen down to the surface of the planet, because he has decided to take that whole Jesus thing and maybe go in a more Old Testament direction, little eye for an eye, and decide to take the holograms on a hunting trip against the Hirogen on the poison planet. So they beam them down. He's got the eye of the murder. He disables the doctor, takes his mobile emitter, puts the mobile emitter on, and then all the holograms get guns and they go down and are like, let's shoot us some Hirogen.
They need that Karthik release because they could have just shot the disabled Hirogen vessels and blown them up. They could have just transported all the Hirogen into space for a miserable Seska-esque death, but instead they put them on the poison planet, so they start, I don't know, melting or whatever, and they want to make sure their last couple minutes are filled with terror as they return the fate that the Hirogen have inflicted on all of them.
It turns out if you make holograms suffer through sadism, they're going to become sadists. That's like the lesson here.
Well, it also turns out that if you just treat holograms normal, they become sadists anyways. So it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't.
AI in the Federation is horrific. That's what we're trying to say. Data is
Yeah.
the exception, not the rule.
Yeah, it's a short-sighted plan now that I'm thinking about it, because they've shown mercy to Voyager. Voyager has clearly come on scene as a alpha level threat, since it can completely shithouse anything that's Hirogen in technological nature. Their plan is to beam down to the surface with the old think tank AI prop, which is like their super holographic emitter that can, like, I don't know, project anywhere on the planet to let them build this utopia of light. And it's like, how exactly are you guys going to address Voyager? Because worst case scenario, Voyager can just nuke you from orbit. So what's the plan? What's the real plan here, other than get some real quick and dirty revenge on Hirogen?
Well, before we can answer those questions, some of these holograms very successfully murder the Hirogen. Murder Tarsus lights one up. One of the Borg light one up. The Hirogen are not faring well against their former prey on the hunt. And to try and mitigate the circumstance, they send the doctor down to try and find Iden and put an end to what's going on. Voyager's able to get the rest of the holograms up. They intercede. The good hologram that's the Cardassian on the ship is helping B'Elanna try and fix all this. Because B'Elanna, through the connection they've made, manages to convince her, like, you just have to betray them. Like, that's the only way through this, is that they're not doing the right thing.
She's been laying the seeds of this moment well the whole scene, because
engineers are the ones that build societies.
Yeah, don't let Iden be the fucking the leader guy here. Like, you got a role in all this too. So she's been pumping this handle for a minute. I will concede, I think, based on what we see here, because all of this is supposed to be founded on Federation technology, right? Yes,
it is.
So there's a couple scenes here where the Hirogen are able to get their hands on some of these holographic characters and, like, slam them around before ultimately the holograms burn them. I will say, based on what we see here, based on the fact this is Brian Fuller, that moving forward, if we see holograms getting punched, shot, whatever, and the beams don't always go right through, there's a strong precedent that unless the hologram is very specifically willing themselves to be incorporeal, they are susceptible to physical grappling and all that. But in the end, the holograms just fucking clean the floor with these guys. And you've got all of them beamed off to safety, but you get this this Mexican standoff with Iden, and he's got his gun on a Hirogen, and then there you got the Doctor with a huge ass Hirogen blaster rifle, and Iden's like, it's not in your nature to kill, but the Doctor's like, well, then you haven't seen at least half my episodes because
I
I
literally gave someone AIDS 5 or 6 episodes back just to prove a point. I've been responsible for a lot of death. You would be easy.
I know you think you're a badass because all the people you just killed, like I almost nuked a colony of space vampires that look like Napoleon Dynamite. Like you ain't got shit on me, bitch. Shoots Iden, saves the day. He vaporizes Iden, yet in the process does not somehow destroy the mobile emitter that is directly attached to him. Convenient.
They get the rest of the Hirogen out. The Hirogen decide to accept Neelix's suggestion that they claim the hunt was successful and roll out, lest they mess with Voyager, who's clearly capable of incinerating both of them at will. It's actually in the dialogue of like, you can fuck with us and we'll just blow you up. How about that?
We can fuck around and find out,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And uh, they they give Voyager the compliment, "You would have been worthy prey." Like they were prey several times. There were episodes about it. We watched them.
Mm-hmm.
That's why you're here, because of one of those episodes. What is wrong with get out of here? And so they beam him out, and then they have a very unsettled ending, which I really liked. Which is first, Janeway goes over the holographic ship, and it's B'Elanna, the Cardassian hologram, and the Nibley, Mr. Nibley, the little Hirogen. And they're like, so what do we do with all of these holograms? And all of them,
murderous holograms.
all of them but Iden are still in existence. Iden's was actually killed by the Doctor. And they're like, well, what we're going to do is we're going to roll out and we're going to think about our lives and we're going to find a way to fix this. Because what else are we going to do? I mean, these are our sentient creations. Deleting them isn't an option. Keeping them in stasis isn't an option. I'm being responsible for this. Mr. Nibley's like, I have to help fix this. And, the Cardassian hologram's like, I got to...
Interesting question to pose because, boy, if I got some answers, Joe. Mr. Nibley says, first thing we're going to do is I'm going to roll back some of the updates I put in that made them extra murderous and psychotic, which everybody seems okay with. Yet when that was initially proposed, resetting these guys to factory defaults, to like everybody had their fucking cackles up in a roar about that.
Yeah.
I guess you could say it's not like we're not going to erase their memories or like lobotomize them. We're just going to tone down some of the cheats we put in. So we've got two things we want to consider here first, right? Number one is there's a piece of technology that is now in play that is so powerful it can encapsulate an entire planet in a holographic projection, right? Which, remember the big deal I made about like suspended animation juggalo tech from the Thaw, right?
Right.
I think now you very clearly have a piece of technology that dwarfs even that in terms of plot breaking scope. And also, you got a bunch of fucking badass holograms that, boy, howdy, wouldn't they be great to have on a ship like Voyager that has done nothing but lose crew members, need extra pair of hands? It would be Federation technology coming home to the Federation. It would be Federation accepting the abused children it dumped in the Delta Quadrant to a bunch of murderers. God forbid you get Simon Tarses in a gold jumpsuit and you actually have a security team, a high risk, what was the elite force is the hazard team. You got a hazard team that could fucking beam over to like spoopy planets and just kick some fucking ass. Like,
imagine if they could bring their teammate Shockey with them.
You don't even need shock. Look, you got holograms that can hold their breath and blow people away slow motion, alien style or a Predator style. Like, I get you can't bring these guys in because they, quite frankly, are too good for Voyager. But man, this really talk about a missed opportunity on Janeway's, and not even to fucking suggest like maybe you guys should just come with us. Hirogen Tech dude, here you can live in a nice society that's going to treat you as an equal and let you pursue your scholastic interests, and all these other holograms. We're gonna like cut back your testosterone just a little bit, and you guys can pick up like a third shift maybe and live in our utopia. We'll put up a Fairhaven thing, and everybody can just live happy coexistence. And the next time, everybody gets put to sleep, or we've got another telepathic alien vampire here running amok, you guys can just brain slap them or something.
I completely agree that is a rad fucking idea. Like, why not just enlist these guys as your holographic stormtroopers? Like, and set up a playpen for them, and
You can't even
otherwise
say it's like
facilitate this.
we don't have the computer power to store them or whatever lame excuse. You got this world generator, put that in the cargo bay next to 7 and 9, and now the fucking the Malorn or whatever here to fuck with us. Okay, you've got a holographic projector that could uncover like an entire planet. Like, hey, put Simon Tarses and our rolling crew on their ship. Just boop them over there and brain slap them, and then we'll be along on our way.
Slappers only, one shot kills.
You could build crazy armor around your ship and give Voyager tentacles and I don't know, legs or something.
Like, I do like the idea though, like why not just go the whole hog and be like, instead of having weapons, all you have are these beams that beam murder holograms onto your opposing vessels. That's it. That's space combat now. It's getting your murder holograms onto the opposing vessel.
You could, and again, we're just way off the rails here, but like we've all played StarCraft, right?
Mm-hmm.
You just turn Voyager into a Protoss carrier with holographic drones just swarming, and the lulls don't stop. They've put such crazy power into play here.
There was one last scene worth talking about, which was the final scene of the Doctor and Janeway talking. Janeway's in the Doctor's office in his seat. She is a disappointed mom. The Doctor feels incredible remorse. She's like, listen, I know I'm your only doctor, so you have to keep me on the job, but here's my mobile emitter.
Stupid.
Take away my autonomy. I totally understand. I betrayed the shit out of you, and I am sorry I did it. And again, I'm disappointed we're doing this scene again, because we did this scene in season 5, which is Janeway's connecting with the concept the Doctor is a person. But we're doing it again, and she reflects that, yeah, you did a thing a person would do, which is made an emotional decision based on people you thought were being oppressed that I wasn't willing to help. And I'm going to have to think about this for a while, and so are you, and I want to report, and I'm not taking anything away from you right now. And I think that if this were in season 5, I would feel great about that scene. I think it's just like Janeway should not be kind of flummoxed by what to do here at this point.
I wish I could give a fuck. I wish that I hadn't seen this scene at least 4 times previous. I wish that Janeway, like B'Elanna and so many other characters, wasn't caught in this perpetual character loop where it's, here's the same story and we're going to show it to you 6 different ways. And I'm sure the next time anything holographic related comes up, Janeway is going to view all holograms as a toaster again. I can't take any of this as sincere, because
it's so weird because everybody else is on board with the Doctor being a person. Like, everyone else is grown. Like, Chakotay, in the scene they had in the walk and talk, is like, no, I get it. He's like a freedom fighter. I've done that. Like, he totally accepts the personhood, and it's only Janeway who just can never seem to have these kinds of revelations stick. And it does become tiresome. Overall, though, I liked it. I liked the episode. I loved Iden. I think that's our major dividing point, where I think Iden's character works beautifully in context of what Bajorans are about and what happened to them. That really seals the deal for me.
I would rather them have either made Iden wholesome the whole way through and put some other moral dilemma and made the Hirogen completely antagonistic and forced Voyager to say, we're going to side with the holograms and kill the Hirogen and give these holograms their own planet, similar to Demon. Or that it turns out, after all, that everything Mr. Nibley said was true, that the holograms will do everything and anything within their power, lie as much as it takes to accomplish their goal, and that every single one of these holograms was really a bloodthirsty, ravenous lunatic, and they all had to go. Putting this split and making only Iden be the bad guy just felt like a shitty compromise, and I don't know. Like, I really enjoyed this. This was great. That was a weak part of the story. I think they could have done it better, but especially for Voyager episode, this was great for 101 different reasons. Great continuity. You told me that this was coming up, but I never in 100 years would have suspected that they were going to tell a Hirogen holodeck holographic war story. Good development for the Doctor. Great use of B'Elanna Torres. Dope CG. Yeah, the just two rough parts for me were Iden having his heel face turn, or his face heel turn, I should say, and them completely ignoring the fact that maybe Voyager should bring a bunch of sweet ass holographic Starfleet crew members over. Having a Borg on the payroll. Also, here, if you wanted to put a cherry on top, a crazy wish list opportunity here, when you're stealing the Doctor's program, go ahead and fucking just so happen to grab barkeeper Michael while you're at it too.
There you go. That would have gotten Kathy real interested in helping.
Ooh. Send barkeeper Michael over there to negotiate with Iden on backing off this murder thing.
Hey, listen, I understand you don't like organics, so I sent another hologram I can trust. Yet another opportunity for barkeep Michael to have been a recurring character with some value.
Iden, I'm telling you right. Michael, if you can't convince Iden to be reasonable, you have my permission to break a bar stool over his head.
All right, Kathy. I'll do what I can. Listen, Iden. I understand being oppressed. I'm Irish. I am the Earth version of you. What are we watching next week, Peter?
We're going into season 7, episode 11, Shattered, and there we got a fish eye angle shot of Chakotay in the turbolift. After Voyager goes through a temporal rift, Chakotay finds he's able to pass through time spheres that are scattered about the ship. This sounds awful.
This is Voyager doing a clip show.
No.
That is not a clip show. That is the
This is an astral dream warrior, Chakotay.
This is one of my personal favorite Voyager episodes.
How?
You'll see.
When's the last time you watched this?
Pretty recently.
What's pretty recently?
Within the last 5 years.
It's not a recent show. You will see under the critical lens of Voyager, please, is this actually a good episode? Or
I think you're going to like it, Peter.
I hope I do.
I know you will. I know you will.
All right.
I will. You're going to come to our discussion.
Is this code for Seskas in this episode?
I'm going to tell you nothing else about what you're going to watch.
All right, we'll see.
All right. And we'll see you next week when we discuss episode 11 of season 7, Shattered. Thank you. See you next week.